From the City of Angels off the Pacific Ocean, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation, around the world. I'm George Norrie, and welcome to the world's most listened to late-night talk show, Coast to Coast AM. Thank you, Cleveland, WTAM, huge number one. And I'll just talk about a few more throughout the week, and then that shall be it. Two surprise guests for you tonight for the first 2 hours. Nancy Leader back from Zeta Talk. She channels, and we're going to talk with her about some amazing things that are going on. And then in the last 2 hours, he's back, David Booth. He's the one who had some incredible dreams about a plane crash at O'Hare Airport, an American Airlines flight that killed 271 people back in 1979. He had been on the program before. He is back again. We'll explain all of that a little bit later on when David Booth is on. Democratic presidential candidate Barack Obama, a U.S. Senator from Illinois, has been placed under protection of the Secret Service. The government is not aware of any specific credible threat against him, according to a law enforcement source. But the campaign has apparently received hate mail, calls, and other threatening materials in the past and during his campaign. The Republicans debated tonight, by the way. Wally Schirra, who was one of the original Mercury 7 astronauts, combined the right stuff, the textbook perfect flying ability, and steel nerves, has died at the age of 84. He was the only astronaut to fly in all three of NASA's original manned spaceflight programs, Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo. Although he never walked on the moon, Schirra laid some of the groundwork that made the lunar landings possible and won the space race for the United States. At the time, Richard C. Hoagland was a consultant for Walter Cronkite in CBS News. He's got some great stories about Wally Schirra. Hey, Richard, thanks for coming back.
Yeah, thank you, George. This is kind of a sad day. I got the news this morning from a friend of mine, and I immediately went to the web, and sure enough, it was true. Wally was 84. I think he died last night sometime during your show, and NASA released the information this morning. One of the stories that I have, which is vivid in my mind, is after Apollo 11, we at CBS were all getting ready for Apollo 12, and I remember standing up in the green room off the studio where we had various guests for these things in November of 1969, a few months after Apollo 11, and we were waiting for word on the successful Apollo 12 touchdown, Pete Conrad and Alan Bean. And as we were kind of waiting, Schirra once told me that, spaceflight, being an astronaut, was kind of like, hours and hours and days and years of interminable boredom punctuated by moments of stark terror. So we were in the boredom phase waiting for Apollo 12 to land. So one of our guests was a friend of mine from Houston named Paul Gast, who was a member of the Lunar Sample Analysis Team at the Lunar Receiving Laboratory in Houston. So we're upstairs in this green room, and it's Cronkite and me and a couple of the correspondents and Schirra and Paul Gast, and I forget who else. And Paul said, would anybody like to hold a moon rock? And we all went, and we formed this circle. It was almost like one of these weird magical circles. Cronkite and Schirra and me and the other guys and Paul, and he took these little vials out of his coat pocket, and he put in our palms, or upturned palms, these little pieces of moon rock that had come from the moon just a couple of months before, from Apollo 11, from Neil and Buzz being down on the moon. And each of us passed it from one to the other in this little silent ritual. And I remember standing there holding a piece of the moon, George, and I looked over at Wally Schirra. And at that point, we thought we might get missions beyond 17, and he was going to command maybe the last lunar mission. And I remember watching him as he reacted to this, because he was as awestruck as anybody else, the guy who'd done everything. Lawrence Dunkelman, an old friend of mine at Goddard, had told me when Wally joined the Mercury program back during his Mercury flight, he said the whole space program took a huge leap forward because Wally was such an incredible guy. He was a sharp guy. He was a funny guy. He was a technical guy, but he was an ordinary guy who could explain things so that engineers could actually understand what the astronauts needed. Anyway, I'm watching him hold this moon rock in his palm of his hand, and he's kind of looking at all of us, and it was like he was about an inch or two bigger than his suit. It was an incredible impression, George, and I realized at that moment, in a flash, why these guys were astronauts, and I wasn't.
They have the right stuff.
They sure had, and Wally had the hell of the right stuff, and he is very missed tonight.
He was just, I used to remember him sitting next to Cronkite during...
Well, he was our guy. He was our astronaut on, when we had Arthur Clarke, and we had Wally, and we had Robert Heinlein, who I brought in, but Wally was the Mr. Astronaut for Walter on any technical question, and he was so capable of, he actually should have been someone to run for political office, because he could be both real, he could explain complicated things, he had very clear vision.
He was good.
And he was a hell of a nice guy.
Very quickly, yesterday, the freight train that was carrying some shuttle parts derailed in Alabama. You've got some more information on that?
Well, it's looking now, and I don't want to use the S word inconsequentially, but it's looking now that maybe we're not looking at an accident here. It turns out that only less than a week before, last Friday, 60 miles outside of Kansas, Salina, Kansas, two trucks, there are these big wheels on railroad cars are called trucks, came off the rails for some inexplicable reason. And this is the only two shuttle train accidents that they've had in the entire history of the shuttle program, and they're in two separate states, two separate trains, back to back. It looks like maybe somebody is targeting the shuttle program for reasons that we don't have time to get into tonight, but we should keep our eyes on this.
Okay, thank you, Richard, and thank you for the fine things you said about Wally Schirra. Richard C. Hoagland, EnterpriseMission.com. Wally Schirra, one of the original Mercury 7 astronauts. I remember as a boy, I have that picture of those 7 dead at the age of 84. Well, the French-led Kherat Space Telescope has found its very first planet, a very hot world bigger than Jupiter, passing in front of a far-off star. The spacecraft was launched on December 27th of last year and is the first to hunt for Earth-like planets from space. The Kherat scientists said that they found this planet, and it is significantly exceeding pre-launch expectations with this telescope. The new body is called Kherat Exo 1b, can be found 1,500 light-years away. Now, that's compared to the planet they just found also that is 20 light-years away. This one is 1,500 light-years away in the constellation of Monteceros. That's a long way away. In a moment, Nancy Leader, our special guest on Coast to Coast AM. And you might want to get up to the coasttocoastam.com website, take a look at some of the pictures we're posting here. Nancy Leader is a computer professional. She left the West Coast in 1999 and moved to the Midwest. She claims to be an enhanced contactee. She can speak telepathically with aliens from Zeta Reticuli. Nancy says the Zetas have revealed to her information about life on other worlds, the ET origins of the human species, the Zeta-human hybrid program, its reasons, methods, political science of the cosmos, the WHO rules and the rules of engagement protocols. And she's just been a regular guest on Coast to Coast, been away for a long time, couple of years, and she is back. Her return, the imminent return of Nancy Leader, and maybe also the extra planet. Hi, Nancy. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good.
Good to hear your voice.
George, you guys have had a picture of Planet X on your website, unbeknownst to you, since, I don't know, a couple of months now. It's called Fire in the Sky. Somebody notified me by email and said, "Is this Planet X?" And I was astonished. It's one of the best photos. It was a very clear sky. Guy was walking the Delaware Beach just ahead of dawn, and the sun can be seen coming up, the light of the sun to the left. The moon is in the sky, and there, just offset from the moon, is Planet X shrouded in dust. A perfect shot.
It's not the moon that we thought, huh?
It's not the moon. The moon is there. You can see the moon.
Yeah.
And there's no chemtrails. You know why they're fogging up the sky with chemtrails. They don't want you to see that orb, which is usually sighted just a little bit to the right of the sun on rising and setting is the best time because that's when orange light kind of bends and the sun itself gets larger, and likewise Planet X would appear if the light is bouncing off of it correctly, would appear. And people have been sending me emails saying, I'm beginning to see the second sun again, rising and setting. So that's why the increase in chemtrails, fogging up the skies, they do not want you noticing that orb. But if you want to see what they don't want you to see, go and look, folks. Fire in the sky. And I'm hoping that a link, that Lex puts a link in directly to that page. It was the best. And the guy didn't know what he had captured. He didn't know what he had. He said, what is this? I've been sitting on this for months, since the fall, and someone said, send it to Coast. Well, we knew what it was.
Nancy, we're going to have you channel a little bit later on tonight.
Yep.
And lately, the world is talking about global warming and huge Earth changes.
Right.
We've all got our own views on why we think this is happening. Some believe it's man-made. Others believe that it's cyclical. What's your take on this, and what are you told?
The Zetas have said it is not man-made. We have had this increase because Planet X is hoved into our inner solar system, and it's here. It's so shrouded in dust, we don't see it like a planet, like Venus, where the sunlight bounces off of it, and it's a real clear. It's like looking into a fog bank because it's so shrouded by that red dust that is of legend, like Revelations saying, well, the red dust will make the rivers run blood red. So as it comes in, it upsets the equilibrium. There's a lot of particles that flow around in a solar system that we're unaware of. The Zetas say we're aware of maybe only 1 out of 1,000 subatomic particles that they know of that flow around. So in our core has been swirling, and our magnetism has been jerked in different directions, and all of this causes the core to swirl, heating up from the bottom up, our ground. Scientists have measured this. The rocks are heating from the bottom up. Permafrost is melting from the bottom up. All those glaciers and the poles melting, that's way outside global warming models.
Well, and as we see what's happening just in the solar system, Nancy, things are heating up as well.
Right.
I want to talk with you about the Mayan calendar date of 2012.
Sure.
I want to get Nancy Leader's take. Later when we channel, we'll get the take of the Zetas as well. This is an ominous date for us. I'm beginning to think, because scientists are now saying 2011, 2012 could be huge solar outbursts. Something's happening, Nancy.
Yeah, well, you know what it is. It just so happens that our normal solar cycles, one ends there. We have a maximum in 2011, conveniently, just ahead of 2012. And they've been warning for years that this particular solar cycle was going to be huge. The Zetas have said, other than global warming, they're going to blame the Earth changes on the sun and say, oh, the sun is being hyperactive, and that's what's causing all this. Well, 2006, for instance, was our solar minimum, and yet it acted like a maximum practically. We had all kinds of stuff. So this is an excuse. Now, yes, it does blip around, but the Zetas have said that's like surface ruffles on the sun. Planet X is coming at us from the direction of the sun, standing between us and the sun, and consequently the particle flows that normally flow out from the sun's middle, have to wrap around it and kind of form an eddy flow on either side, which is why we're trapped in front of it. We can't get out of that eddy flow. Well, all that particle flow disruption causes ruffles on the surface of the sun, but it's not really coming from the sun. The disruption in our planet is caused by a rogue planet 4 times the size of Earth. Van Halen said that it was going to be like 5 times the size of Earth. But this is what's causing the disruptions. Brownouts on occasion, weird atmospheric effects, halos around the sun and the moon, even electromagnetic and grabbing at the Earth, a couple times a day, causing jerking around, which shows up on the live seismographs beautifully as a twice a day, every 12 hours, on the Earth, shuddering. This is Planet X doing this to us, and they're blaming the sun and blaming global warming, but it's neither of those. It's Planet X. They don't want you to know about Planet X.
Nancy, you've not been on for a couple of years. Lots of new people have joined the Coast to Coast family. Tell us a little bit about Nancy Leader.
Yes. Well, I was actually a contactee from even before birth, because reincarnation does exist. I volunteered for a role of a communicator, and the Zetas have been working with me in that light, but it was much more successful than they thought. I was maybe supposed to write a book or something, but it really took off. It's become known around the world. I'm being translated into 21 different languages, if you'll notice my website, zetatalk.com, and I was a sleeper until 55 years of age. I mean, I had the scars, I had the missing time, I had all the signs, but apparently I was supposed to be asleep until 55 so I could have a normal life, manager of computer system development and the like, and raise my kids, send them to college, blah, blah. And then, because as soon as I was aware, Zeta Talk began on the chat boards, and that obsessed my life. So I retired early so I could devote my life. And, I'm on Social Security now. And to walk my own talk and move to the Midwest where I have gardens and herbs and chickens and I'm prepared to, distill my water and have firewood as the only source of heat and light or whatever, or maybe throw up a windmill.
I envy that sometimes.
I'm walking my talk because San Francisco was sitting on the San Andreas. How could I be taken seriously? Warning people to get out of earthquake zones and away from the coast if I was living there. So I left the beautiful coast. Miss it still.
A couple years ago when Planet X didn't come by, at least the way I expected it to,
right.
You still contend it's there and it's around. We just didn't see it. But
yes.
I basically kept you off the air. And, I'm the kind of person to sit back and go, you know what? Was that a right decision? Was that a wrong decision? But you're back, so that'll tell you one way of my thought pattern. But I wanted to ask you, since the 2 years have gone by, were you bitter about that? How did you feel about that?
Well, actually, that was May 15th, 2003, because from the start of Zeta Talk in 1995, they said the pole shift will happen shortly after May 15th, 2003. And to show you how seriously the White House or the government, and they were aware of Zeta Talk, on May 15th, there was an Operation Planet X in Iraq. They called the largest top-off exercise at that time in the history of this is, they had 100 different agencies, Canadian and U.S., from coast to coast, alerted and doing exercises so that if they had to declare martial law, everybody was already activated, right? The reason the Zetas did that was to drive George Bush and his group into Iraq early, so that they would fall on their sword and fail, which they have. They have in essence, because the plan of the group that put George Bush into the White House was to sit on all the oil fields of the world. Black gold is going to be the big commodity of the future, or so they think, and therefore look at the reserves. Iran, Iraq, and Saudi, those are the three of the largest reserves, seriously. And not only do they pump, but they have the proven reserves. So
they're even bigger than they had thought, apparently.
Yes. And the idea was to be in a position using the U.S. military, but now the whole thing is degraded because the military is fed up and depleted and wanting to come home, and so it's not going, and everybody else has kind of risen up. China and Russia are pushing, supporting Iran, and so the Zetas did that because Planet X did zoom into the solar system in 2003. We had second sun sightings all the time because we were on the opposite side of the sun, and the sunlight was bouncing off that dust cloud toward us. Now the situation is it's between us and the sun, and we can't see it as readily except for that lovely coast-to-coast photo you have provided. Ooh.
There is a link there, by the way.
That had to be a guided affair. The guy had to be guided to take that photo and go for a walk. A lot of things happen that are unexplained, except that angels are guiding this process so that people become aware. And it creeps past the sun very slowly, but now it's on its outward-bound path, and we're like deer in the headlights. We can't get out of the way. So they did this false state. Was I devastated? You betcha. I mean, I just didn't know. I was like had a tonic for a week or so, just went on long walks in the woods, but then when they came out and explained what they had done, and I was explaining to people, the fan club just kept coming in and asking for clarification. In the meantime now, Zeta predictions, one after the other, have come true. Things that were made in 95, late 90s, etc. The weather...
Let's talk about some of those more when we come back, Nancy. Nancy Leader, her website, zetatalk.com. We'll be back in a moment. We'll talk about some of these predictions a little bit later on. I shall talk to the Zetas through Nancy. And when we return, we'll talk with Nancy Leader. We'll have her channel the Zetas because we've got some incredible questions about the future of all of our existences here on this planet Earth. Back in a moment. Nancy, your past predictions are for the world to see. You've had them posted on your website. We've had some on ours over the years. Mm-hmm. Let's review them, if you would. Tell us a little bit about some of them.
Yeah, there's so many, actually, that I lose track, but some of the biggies are today's weather. Now, in 1995, when Zeta Talk began, the Zeta said we're going to have more drought and deluge, and that will switch about for no apparent reason. Areas used to a lot of rain will become droughty and vice versa, you know, and this has become a trend. They also said that we would have temperature extremes, not outside what the Earth experiences today, but, well, certainly this last spring has been like that. We had an 80-degree day in March, and now the 8 inches of snow 2 weeks later here in Wisconsin. They said that storms would be no more fierce than before. In other words, we wouldn't get more than a Category 5 hurricane, nor tornadoes, because the atmosphere acts as a brake on just how fast wind can go, but they would appear in atypical places, and that appeared after they made that prediction. Nobody else was making these predictions in 1995, and boy, did I get scoffed at. But no one is saying, my debunking crowd, the weather is perfectly normal. You don't hear that so much anymore, but that's one. Another one that is more geographically related, 9 months before the December 26, 2004 Sumatra tsunami quake, that biggie, 9.5, they said that we were going to have an earth torque where the Earth was going to kind of open up.
2005, I think, right?
Was it? No, it was December 26, 2004. That was just ahead of 2000.
Was it? Okay.
Yes, it was.
Right.
Anyway, in May of 2004, they said, like a jar of pickles, put your hand on the North Pole, turn it to the right, put your hand on the South Pole, pull it back to the left, like you're going to open a jar. That's what's going to happen to the Earth, and that will ease pressure on the west coast of the Americas because that will continue to go along with rotation and not be pulled back, where along the rest of the Ring of Fire there'll be like a pileup. Well, that's been showing up ever since that 9 months later then when they had that Sumatra thing. The IRIS charts show that. The west coast of the Americas would be quake-free. And people would say, what happened to the west coast quakes? The rest of the Ring of Fire is just, you know, splattered with these quakes. I thought that a very dramatic example that IRIS is proving a Zeta Talk accuracy, but there's too many incidences to even mention.
Nancy, the Zetas, are they still out there? Are they circling the planet here? Where are they?
Yeah, they can shift into another dimension like all aliens can. They can switch over into what they call fourth density, and where they say we're in third density. What this amounts to is that our atoms vibrate at a different frequency. So they can be standing right next to you, vibrating faster, so your eyes can't perceive them. And but souls can always communicate. Chatting soul to soul happens across dimensions. But for telepathic conversations, because my brain is in third dimension, they're in third density, they're in third density. They can be in a spaceship overhead or a long ways away. They form teams to get ready for questions such as yours, such as you're getting ready to ask.
Okay.
And depending on the audience, depending on the nature of the questions. And they kind of do this in their spare time while they're doing their other tasks.
I will remember the last time you were on with me and you were channeling, and some guy called, and he wanted to know what he would look like in the future. And the Zetas said, an ugly old woman.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I have never laughed so hard in all my life. It's just...
Don't ask if you don't want to know.
Well, that is true. They are finding, and we led into you with another discovery of another planet outside of our solar system, way outside, 1,500 light years away. We're finding more and more of these. Now, I'll probably ask the Zetas this, but in your opinion, do you think this universe is teeming with intelligent life?
Oh, no question. And I've met so many of them. I was given an orientation after I realized that I was a contactee back there in the early 1990s. And they started out with hominoid types, some with very thick skin that almost looked like a turtle's shell to protect from the sun. Some very little or skinny or little green men was one of them, a little short, have a nice day kind of green man. And then they moved to weirder types, reptilian or some that didn't even have, one was like a huge amoeba on the floor, could have been a big green rug that kind of, and an octopus and a bug, an intelligent bug, which I had a hard time with because it looked like a gigantic cockroach. When it stood up on its rear feet, it was as big as me. So, and beanbag man that looked like a beanbag, fringed by little claws and big eyes on the middle, and it said, that it ate bugs that ran over it, and it didn't need legs because the planet it came from was hothouse, swarming with bugs, and it could just grab them. So I've met a number of these, and the Zetas say you can't imagine. They couldn't even give a number that we could fathom. Most planets are water planets, therefore fish, jellyfish, octopi, or whatever are the end. And actually, the aliens that are laying crop circles are water babies, and those ships are filled with water, and this is how they can serve, or this is how they can participate in the transformation our world is undergoing, the spiritual transformation. When Jesus said, 1,000 years of peace, I will return, he was talking about the process that we're undergoing now, where the good-hearted can reincarnate back, and the bad guys get hauled off when they die to the prison planets. And therefore, it's called a transformation, spiritual transformation. It's going to be a great place in about 100 years, but first we got to go through some rock and roll and a pole shift.
I sometimes wonder if we are indeed the prison planet, Nancy.
Oh no, it's mixed. It's actually this. Our Earth has been what they call base, the base planet where souls are sparked. So baby souls are born on this Earth and go through their first steps. And for whatever reason, the rules are that it is a self-learning experience. We get counseling. Aliens can come and counsel us. And like the little devil on one shoulder and the angel on another, you have both voices available to you. If you give a call and you're being selfish or you want to hurt somebody else, you got a little devil coming to talk to you. If you're worried about, helping someone else, how can you help your neighbor? Boom, you got a little angel counseling you. It's called The Call on the Zeta Talk website, and if you go in and read that, there's a lot of examples of how that works and how you can differentiate. But it's like putting the kiddies in the playpen and letting them bonk each other over the head and sort it out. You learn empathy. We're not supposed to be beautiful people and have a wonderful, trouble-free life. No spiritual development happens in that environment. We're supposed to have surprises, troubles, and opportunities to either be a hero or run away and become more selfish and deal with the aftermath. That's our learning experience. So the rules are aliens cannot rescue us. They can only counsel us.
Next hour, when we take phone calls, people can also ask for the Zetas to respond, right?
Yes, absolutely.
You can switch very quickly from question to question.
Yeah, and what I'll do is I'll say, here's the Zetas, and then I'll say this is the end of Zeta Talk, to differentiate between Nancy Talk. And by the way, folks, I am a true translator. I'm a participant, and if I have something in my head that's wrong, they have a hard time getting their concept through that veil. So sometimes I will stumble. If I don't understand a topic, if I'm not on the same page and I don't have a background in it, I can really bloop. But mostly they get their point across even when those occasions happen.
Nancy, do you consider yourself to be psychic?
Yeah, they actually, as far as being, that's telepathic. And in my late 20s, they did an operation in my head, added a little Zeta DNA into my brain where the telepathy center is. And after that, at the time, I didn't know I was a contactee. I was a sleeper. But I do remember suddenly being aware that I could kind of anticipate who was calling when the phone rang, that type of thing. And I played games. I asked people on bus stops, I would say, well, think of something. I don't know you. I can't possibly imagine. Just think about it and let me kind of try to guess. I figured I was running around 55%. Well, that's telepathy. And so, yes, I became a little more psychic.
How do you react to people who do not accept what you say, who simply think, Nancy may be on the other side? Yeah.
She's a sweetie, but she's a crackpot. Yeah. Well, I actually try to present the geological evidence that pole shifts happen periodically, and all the evidence, that a Zeta talk is something more than Nancy talk, because people say she can't possibly be coming up with this, particularly live on the air, that type of thing, and the volume that Zeta talk is. I do live chats on Saturday nights, for instance, so. If they can't deal with the evidence, it's usually because the whole thing frightens them. People are frightened of the alien presence, the idea of some creepy things coming around, and what are the rules? Where's the police force? They feel uneasy. They're already made to feel uneasy by the government. We're told, mass landings, they're going to come down, colonize us. There's some movies along those lines. That's not allowed. There is a police force in the universe that does not allow that, and we're told that because the governments or organized religion, they're a little threatened by the concept of aliens coming around. You notice the church is kind of easing over and saying, well, yes, alien life forms do exist or could exist, that type of thing. And there's so many mass sightings these days that the governments are having to admit. France came out with disclosure,
right,
releasing all their UFO files, and so it's being forced in that direction. But nevertheless, people are uneasy, but mostly they're uneasy about the pole shift message. If you don't have a solution for how, if you can't go to the country, you can't garden, the idea of kicking over a log and hunting for grubs to eat, like a bear, to keep yourself from starving, if that's beyond what you can deal with, you say denial. The wife who finds lipstick on her husband's collar and she can't deal with a divorce, she says, oh, she didn't see a thing. Mm-hmm. If the doctor says you have cancer and the man can't deal with it, he says, no, I don't. So denial is a way out, and people who can't deal with it, who are frightened by it and don't feel, and therefore, the more we can talk about what people can do, what steps they can take to save themselves, what signs to look for, when to take action. Like maybe you can't leave the coast, but we're going to have like 3 days of darkness and the Earth slowing to a stop and in rotation for a week. These things are obvious signs no one's going to miss, and when that happens, here's what you do, because forget paying taxes, forget, the mortgage or whatever. It's not going to happen. Head for the hills.
When do you think that could occur?
Well, the Zetas are not giving the time. Apparently, they are not actually allowed, nor are any other alien races allowed to name the date. And they just are allowed to give a series of signs. And they said before the 3 days of darkness, we're going to actually lean to the left, our North Pole away from Planet X, which is a little to the right of the sun. So we'll lean in the other direction. And also, an Earth wobble has developed, which is becoming more erratic. Recently, for instance, many people are saying the sun is too far north when it rises and sets. And this is something you can measure. I mean, people who have never heard of Zeta Talk or Planet X are posting on message boards saying, Criminy, I've been driving, to work, the same job for 30 years, and the sun at this time of day always, and blah, 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 and it's way over there. And then all kinds of people chirp in from all over the world saying, me too. And this kind of anecdotal evidence, they don't get out there, with sextants or whatever measures the azimuth and altitude, but they know where the sun comes up, and they're saying it's as far north as midsummer and even further north. So this is something you can check, folks, and if you've been noticing this, go to the Zeta Talk website. You get a lot of support.
Let's go into the Zeta Talk mode if we can, Nancy, for a few questions before we take listener calls with you in the Zetas next hour.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yep.
To the Zetas, in 1961, the Barney and Betty Hill abduction case, in which they claimed they were abducted by extraterrestrials under hypnosis, and that they claim came from the Zeta Reticuli star system. What can you tell us about that episode?
Here's the Zetas on that. We have stated that this was a true report. They were not ourselves, the Zetas that are visiting Nancy, but a different species of Zeta, of which there are 127 different species, worlds, that within Zeta Reticuli that carried hominoids who were planted and genetically engineered as Homo sapien was. This was indeed a way of demonstrating to the public. We trusted Betty to deliver a very clear, concise message, which she did not muddy it, and remember it true and be able to draw the picture. And through another of our contactees in Minnesota, a woman who understood star systems and recognized the Zeta Reticuli constellation, this became famous. It is, in fact, how we got the name Zeta. So, indeed, this was a series of contactees willing to help in the awakening process, and more were involved than just these two women in this awakening scenario. End of Zeta Talk. So they had support. Perhaps the doctor doing hypnosis, perhaps he was a contactee too. You know, you'd be surprised how many people are.
What do you look like, Zetas?
Okay, this is the Zetas again. We have very thin bodies in terms of what you're used to, your pudgy, soft skin. We, in fact, don't appear to breathe, but that's because our lungs act like bellows, one filling while the other empties. We have no longer require food, having genetically engineered ourselves to be able to absorb nutrients in our spas, and this has nothing to do with cutting up bodies and creating vats. We obviously create our nutrients in the laboratory and soak in clear water, and we have huge eyes because our suns were dim. In fact, our worlds go around stars, dim stars that you don't even see, you don't even account for in the Zeta Reticuli constellation. Those are the bright stars. So our eyes are huge, like your night vision animals. We have great strength in our bone structure, which is heavier than yours, because most of our worlds had heavier gravity, and therefore, as Nancy will report, she has seen us bound up 15 feet with just a little flick of our ankles as though we were skipping rope. And we have our thumbs are more embedded into the palms, so that some people think we have no thumbs, but we do. A very hard fingernails and also thicker skin. We appear gray in color to you, but only because your eyes cannot deal with the color. We see more colors than you do, and actually Homo sapiens has a limited color vision. And end of Zeta Talk on that.
Describe your craft for us.
Here's the Zetas. We have a number of craft. Our motherships are monstrous and are hover overhead where you cannot view them because we bend light rays around them, so you think you're seeing the cloud on the other side of the mothership, or we hide within clouds. We have a series of smaller craft. Some are operational to carry perhaps 30 of ourselves or humans. These are the type of craft where if we are picking people up to meet, and we do act as a coordinator among contactees, they'll be meeting on this craft, and there may be 20 or a dozen contactees in the center of this craft. Generally, the center room is open for activities. And we also have small shuttles, which are indeed just, to get 2 or 3 people or aliens, or Zetas ourselves from one spot to another, perhaps pick up a contactee and bring them to a spot in an open meadow for a larger meeting. And then we have various utility ships, which can pick up heavy objects on Earth and move them, or put them into fourth density so that they seem to disappear and move them to another part of your solar system or the universe. We indeed are setting up housekeeping around your solar system and on Earth in fourth density where you can't see us, or when shielded, by a camouflage of some sort, where you think you're looking at the desert, but in fact we have a city there, because we are getting ready for the coming times when good-hearted people are being saved because they are going to be the future residents of the Earth, and protected from the pole shift.
All right, well, stay with us. We'll be back with Nancy Leader in just a moment right here on Coast to Coast. And yes, she'll continue to channel the Zetas. I've got a few Zeta questions, and I'm sure you do too. So when you do call, you can... Okay, this hour we'll take questions. We'll chat with Nancy or the Zetas. It's your choice on Coast to Coast AM. And back with Nancy Leader, your phone calls, jammed phone calls. People have missed you, Nancy.
No, they always do.
So how's things going? How's health is fine? Family's fine?
Yeah, I had a minor stroke about a year ago, but no. I'm on Crestor and blood pressure meds and feeling good.
Good for you.
Unfortunately, that's my genetics, and I think the Zetas have their hand in there to keep me alive, too.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
When the stroke was happening, how did you know something was wrong?
My right side kind of got weak. It was one of those transient things, scary as all get out. I mean to tell you, and then when it lifted, laying there in the emergency room, I was like, oh gosh, because who wants to drag around, looking like Igor and Frankenstein monster, or not being able to talk right, or that type of thing, So
well, you sound fine now.
Yeah, it was transient, and it went away. But boy, it scared the willies out of me. But Crestor works great for me. It does all that it promises to do. Not everybody can take it, but it dropped my bad cholesterol by half, raised my good cholesterol, just like the ads say. And I got to tell you, I miss it if I don't take it in a day. Believe me.
Well, make sure you take CoQ10, okay, when you take that statin, because it does have a way of depleting it from your body, and you really need it. So it's a great supplement.
Yeah, I'll look into that.
Okay. All right, let's go to the phones, and again, you can ask a question of Nancy or the Zetas. You pick. Hello there. You're on the air, Wildcard Line.
Hi.
Yes.
Well, I'm calling from Tacoma, Washington on KVI.
Well, hi there. What's your name?
Carolyn.
Okay, Carolyn. So your question is for whom?
The Zetas.
The Zetas. Okay, go ahead.
I want to know about the Iraq War, if it's going to end or if we'll keep fighting, and if the price of the gas will come down.
Okay, here's the Zeta talk on that. We have stated that, in fact, there's an evacuation going on in Iraq, but the public is not told this. The U.S. military has long ago broken from considering Bush their commander-in-chief. Hark back to August of 2003 when there were long faces in Crawford, everybody visiting. That's when the football was taken away from Bush by the military. But they feel that the public is not ready to understand just how criminal this White House is, in particular Cheney's action, so that the American public would be upset. What's going on? The core of their leadership in disarray, about to be arrested, and who's in charge. And until they're forced to make that announcement to the public, they go through some dance pretending that Bush is the commander-in-chief. But he has ordered many times for an invasion of Iran, as we have stated on the Zeta Talk website, and the military has simply not followed the orders. Likewise, martial law ordered this. All these orders ignored. Memos lost. Did somebody say something? Nothing's going to happen. So an evac has been quietly going on, preparations for this, and we have predicted earth changes in Iraq based on the Arabian Peninsula, which if you look at the earthquake plates and the way the African continent is rolling at the top, pulling the Mediterranean apart, dropping the land bridge over into the Black Sea, for instance, around Istanbul, which has had UFO warnings to this effect, and buildings collapsed recently also. that there is a point that ends in Iraq, and as that point turns like the hand of a clock, it's going to grind Iraq up. There's a reason all that oil is in the land there. Basically, the ground fractures during such plate adjustments, and the oil, which is in fact formed by the wafting tail of Planet X over volcanoes, drops to the ground. If it does not burn up in the atmosphere due to lack of oxygen, drains down into the underground cavities, and this is one reason that Iraq is oil rich. So this will be a holocaust. But beyond this, we have predicted that as the Earth changes require the military to be home in the U.S., the Army is just, or the U.S. military is just simply going to evac very quietly, unannounced, not informing any news outlet, and to bring the boys home. And this will speed up as the Earth changes begin to distract people so that very few U.S. military are left in bases around the world. And this is the end of Zeta Talk.
Nancy, why don't the Zetas get more involved in efforts? Why don't they just physically show themselves to us on a mass level and say, stop your fighting, stop doing this, and preserve your planet?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned earlier, this is our self-study planet. We're to learn its spiritual lessons, and they're actually under rules not to interfere with the free will of man, and therefore this is our learning ground. You know, they don't come in today and rescue the starving in sub-Saharan Africa, or cure people of cancer, or whatever. Or tornadoes. They don't stop tornadoes, and this is part of our lessons. As bad things happen to people, we're supposed to muster up and help each other, and learn to do that, or suffer the consequences and deal with the conscience pangs, and our next life do better. That type of thing, and that's how we grow spiritually. So they're actually under rules not to interfere. They are not our parents. They're not our big brothers, etc. They're not going to step in and rescue us. We're to rescue each other. Now, albeit there are exceptions made now and then. You know, in as I mentioned, that they have some cities on Earth where they're taking. I was aware one time of children who were being sold into slavery, probably sex slaves, maybe for snuff films, Lord knows what, and they were in an underground bunker with a piece of metal over it, and a number of humans were taken by spaceship, including I, and we rescued those kids because the element of doubt is not disturbed. Those slavers thought that somebody else took them, or maybe the kids escaped, and those kids were taken because they're good-hearted souls, you know, to a safe city. Now, the element of doubt means that humans are to be able to say, I do believe that aliens exist, life elsewhere, they're visiting, if they're ready for it. But if it creates undue anxiety or fear, then there's an escape clause. Oh, no, just a bunch of kooks claiming they see swamp gas up there in the air. Same thing with Planet X. You know, there's if they're ready to see the signs and notice the sun is too far north this month and that type of thing, they'll see it, they'll deal with it, they'll say, what the heck is going on? But if it frightens the willies out of them, the whole rule is do not increase fear, because that inclines the spirit to go towards selfishness. Yell fire in a crowded building and everyone gets trampled. You know, so fear is to be reduced, and that's called the element of doubt rule that the police force in the universe has mandated that the aliens around Earth now must follow.
First-time caller line, you're on the air with us. Hello there.
Yes, my name is Eric, and I'm calling from North Dakota.
Hi, Eric.
And I have a couple questions for the Zetas.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Number one, how far in advance is your technology to ours?
Okay, here's the Zetas on that. It would be hard for you to fathom. Everyone who views UFOs is aware that we control gravity, that we can disappear into other dimensions. We've mentioned that we manufacture our own food. It's noted on the Zeta Talk website that we live for 400 years and can genetically engineer ourselves, have an IQ of 287 on average. The technology allows us to, for instance, travel across the universe rapidly, basically teleporting ourselves. We commandeer gravity for this, create a tunnel. We eliminate the repulsion force, which is like an anti-gravity force, so that it's just the draw, and it's faster than light, much faster. These matters are hard for humans to conceptualize. We are able to regrow limbs. They don't quite look perfect, but for instance, if we have an arm chopped off, we can control growth hormones. These are some examples. End of Zeta Talk.
And your second question.
And what happened at the beginning? What was the spark for the Big Bang? And I got to run. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. And here's Zetas on that. We have mentioned that black holes and Big Bangs happen periodically in portions of the universe to renew that portion of the universe. It's a natural cyclical process. And why God so structured the universe this way, we have no answer any more than you do. We are frequently asked, does God exist? What is the plan? Why does life form as it does? These are mysteries to ourselves also. We are not the highest level of advancement spiritually. You may be in kindergarten and we may be in fourth grade, but neither of us is getting our PhD and to be privy to this kind of information. So it's a puzzlement for us also. End of Zeta Talk.
Okay, let's go to our East of the Rockies line. You're on the air with us. Hi there.
Hi, this is Melinda from Atlanta. How are you all?
Fine, Melinda.
I have two questions. How old, I want to talk to the Zetas, I'm sorry.
Okay.
How old is the human race? And are all the races from one source? And why are they different races?
Okay, here's Zeta Talk on that. We have been early on in the life of Zeta Talk been asked about this and detailed 6 different races of man that were genetically engineered, not all of which survived. Angola man, for instance, was fuzzy in Africa and did not protect himself, had no aggressive instinct, and faded. And also Indonesia man, who was barrel-chested, was also too slow and cumbersome to protect himself against large predators. But a white man, a black man, China man, and all survived. So how old is the human race? This is taken process over approximately 1 million years. You're aware most recently of the recent history because of the bones that you dig up that reflect proper cranial size for brain and the like show this, but there are many steps that are interim and need to be integrated. Neanderthal man, for instance, was phased out because he could not digest the foods on your earth and was replaced by modern man. Everyone says, why did he die out? And that's the reason. We cut the vase on the males and allowed them to continue their life. They simply didn't produce offspring. So the early stages where you take the ape and begin to make changes, you allow the ape to go back and incorporate and sort out the changes, the genetic engineering, because it may fail. It may not survive in the environment, the field, which is Earth, surface. And therefore, long periods of time are given to allow the genetic engineering to prove itself out or fail. So approximately 1 million years has been in process. End of Zeta Talk.
Anything else, Melinda? That's it?
I wanted to know, are we going to evolve into another set of beings if this one, like this, where we are now, is not good? Will we look like something else in a few years?
Yes. Here's Zetas on that. Indeed, we are forming a hybrid race. This is detailed on the Zeta Talk website. It's a cross between Zetas and humans. Many human contactees say, they put a baby in my arms and I recognized it was mine, or report pregnancies that disappear, and what is considered sexual operations. We collect sperm from men. This is very seldom reported because they're in the passive position on a table, not quite the manly thing that they like to report. But women say, oh, my ova was harvested, or they took a small fetus from me. And these hybrids will be skinny like ourselves, have large eyes like ourselves, but will have your colored pupils, our IQ, our longevity. They will also digest food as humans do, but will not fart, will not gain fat, and do not really require sleep, although will probably have rest periods. where we, the Zetas, do not require sleep. So do explore the hybrid section on Zeta Talk. It has physiological differences and some drawings that Nancy has produced of her participation in this program and her hybrid son, whom she was introduced to. End of Zeta Talk.
Would you, Zetas, tell us if an asteroid was approaching the planet?
Here's Zeta's talk on that. We are not allowed by the rules to warn you specifically when an earthquake is going to happen, when a tornado is going to hit, when a meteor is going to strike. This is considered interference. Very rarely are rules, for instance, the fact that no weapons of mass destruction was found in Iraq, this was due by our hand. We were granted an exception because since the U.S. military is so strong, equal in strength to all other militaries around the world, and the Bush White House, that crowd was intent on commandeering all the oil fields. We were granted an exception by the Council of Worlds to interfere, and we simply snatched those nukes away when they were planted by the CIA, which is supported by the fact that there were some radioactive soldiers who were dying of radioactivity coming back from Germany and recounted or were debriefed in Germany as to the CIA op. So very seldom are the rules allowed to be broken. Some people are protected. Nancy is protected from assassination. You can almost pinpoint the people who are. Al Gore, Fitzgerald, for instance, protected from assassination. Others are not. Why was 7/7 allowed in London? That wasn't covered. New fake terrorism attacks in the U.S., because 9/11 was not quite what it's postured to be officially, are not allowed to happen in the U.S. because that would strengthen the cabal in the White House. But beyond that, we are not allowed to interfere. So we are able to give general warnings. We are able to describe the Earth changes that will happen during the pole shift that are happening now as the Earth is increasingly twisted in a wobble and stress put on plates. There have been numerous UFO sightings recently in China, Istanbul, in the U.S., in the Ozarks and up along into the Carolinas, which will be affected by the New Madrid change. Big one in Chicago last fall. These are accompanied by telepathic warnings to the populace below stating what the Earth changes will be in their area, but we can't give a specific day. We can't say on this day this will happen. That's not allowed. End of Zeta Talk.
The Zetas do not like our politics. So let's go to our wild card line. You're on the air with us. Hi there.
George, it was interesting. You kind of stole my thunder right there. I was going to comment. It seems like the Zetas definitely have a left-of-center political leaning, which is interesting to me. My question is mainly to you, George. You've had a lot of people, a lot of guests on before that, have some kind of strange or out there opinions and stuff, and you've really called them on the carpet. Tonight, this woman is saying things that are incredibly ridiculous, and you're kind of... Now, I don't know why you didn't let her back for a couple of years. I didn't hear all of that. But I just can't believe you're not calling her on the carpet with a lot of these ridiculous statements. I mean, they're incredibly ridiculous, and I think it goes to her credibility, and it really seems like this is a very clownish act that she's putting on. That's the only comment I had.
Give me an example.
Well, she was sitting there talking about the military determining what's going on in Iraq and disobeying the orders of the commander-in-chief. As I know that you were a naval officer, and I was in naval intelligence communications. There is no way with the way that our government and our structure is set up that you can disobey any orders from the commander-in-chief. All the way down to battalion commanders would be removed and relieved of duty pending general court-martial. This is the most ridiculous stuff tonight, and I really think that your producers need to do a better. I really like the show, but tonight is just ridiculous beyond anything that you've ever had. This woman is absolutely a fraud, a ridiculous fraud.
Well, let me give you some examples. I can't name the date, but maybe about 6 months ago, Rumsfeld said that he was going to move a particular battalion from Germany. That never happened. And Bush went on live TV and said that he was going to put 30,000 Marines in to help Israel deal with the Lebanese situation. That never happened.
Stay with us, Nance. We got to take this quick break because I'm not going to get into a debate with the Zetas. Next hour, David Booth joins us. David had a dream many years ago, and it was a continuous dream of a major plane crash. He called the FAA. It's all documented. He called a psychiatrist and kept telling them about this. The FAA determined that he was talking about a DC-10. Indeed, 3 days later, a DC-10 crashed in Chicago. David Booth will be back after I tossed him off the air, and we'll explain all of that and why next hour on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast to Coast. I'm with Nancy Leader and the Zetas and your phone calls. Nancy, 2012. Let me talk to the Zetas. We had a civilization called the Mayans. Some of them now are still around, scattered throughout the land. But they possessed, I think, an incredible knowledge of 2012, of this planet. They're gone now, but they've left behind a date, and the date is December 21st, 2012. Zetas, we hear all kinds of things, but what do you believe is going to occur around that time period?
Okay, here's the Zetas on that. We have mentioned that the calendar is correct in and of itself, but it started off on the wrong foot when aligned with the Gregorian calendar. And the reasons for this. It is essentially a guess. There's three calendars. One is ceremonial, 260 days. One is the long calendar, 360 days, with the 5 days thrown in, and another astronomical. Well, the astronomical could be lined up to things like eclipses and planetary lineups, but there's no hooks across these calendars. So here you have the long calendar, which is ending in 2012, so they think. And they have accounted for the alliance by some symbol carved into a wooden temple archway. Carbon dating was done on this. However, carbon dating is notoriously inaccurate. It can vary by as much as 30 years. The hypothesis has been given. They did their best to try to line it up. They also said the current survivors or Mayan ancestors are practicing the ceremonial calendar, and the ceremonial and long calendar symbols were side by side in a certain position. But who's to say that they didn't lose track during a pole shift, which people do. When a pole shift happens, all record keeping stops, and it's picked up afterwards as best they can. The Egyptian census was stopped, as the Colbran and the Egyptian papyrus and the Book of Exodus reports. This will happen to your civilization. You will certainly not keep calendars. People are trying to sort out what hit them, find out where the sun is shining, because there's so much volcanic gloom, figure out how to grow food because the climate changes. They migrate. They have many worries besides what day and hour it is. So essentially, we are telling you that 2012 is not the date. The pole shift will happen before that year, but just what that date is, we are not saying. End of Zeta Talk.
Zetas, can you tell us who built the pyramids and how?
And this is Zeta Talk on that. These were sighting devices. It is true that the Anunnaki, who live on Planet X and were on Earth in the past mining for gold and enslaving man, and were removed, chased off of Earth by the Council of Worlds because they were disturbing the balance between, in the schoolhouse, between good and evil, frightening man too much so that they could not make a decision to be good-hearted and empathetic, but rather imperialistic and control-oriented. So they were chased off of Earth. But when they lived here, they built the Great Pyramids as a sighting device. There's a long tunnel that goes down into a tiny room where there's a pool that held oil, and another tunnel leading down to that. This was so that they could sight down this, and when their planet came back into the solar system, as it did in 2003, that reddish glow would bounce off that pool of oil, and they would say, it's hoving in. Many generations passed, because 3,600 years is certainly beyond their lifespan. So those who were aware of the return and understood built the pyramids as something that could not shift, so that their ancestors would have a clue and get ready in their rockets to join their mother planet and deliver their payload of gold. Now, of course, due to pole shifts, the Great Pyramids no longer point in the direction that they were intended. And there have been copycats made by the Egyptians who, like all copycats, wanted the grandiosity of the Anunnaki. End of Zeta Talk.
Let's move on to west of the Rockies. You're on the air with us. Hello there.
Hi, George. It's Richard in Las Vegas.
Hi, Richard.
8:40 a.m. How are you?
Wonderful. Thank you.
It's good talking to you. Nancy, it's good to have you and the Zetas there. I got to say, George, that I take offense to that caller before the break. If you can't add something, just shut the radio off, because it's offensive to us as listeners who are trying to learn something here. Now I'll get to Nancy. Hi, Nancy.
Hi.
I'm calling really to speak to the Zetas. I have two questions. My first question is, they're both regarding astrophysical kind of scientific questions. The first question is there an end to the universe?
Wow, that's a heavy one. Here's the Zetas on that. Not that we are aware. There's lots of theories about wrapping around, that it's all circular, so that if you go in one direction, you end up coming in on another side. We have not found that to be true. The universe is vast. In fact, we don't travel the full universe that we're aware of. We go to the edges of what you might consider the universe and see more yet. We are aware that there are portions of the overall that we can't visit. It would be poisonous to us as incarnated species. There are worlds you couldn't visit, nor we, that would be poisonous to us, suns that would, kill us, etc. And it is so vast. Even the Council of Worlds that we work with is only in effect as rule keepers in our portion of the universe. As we mentioned, we are not at the PhD level. We are perhaps in fourth grade where you are in kindergarten, and therefore there are many answers we don't have. We're told, stick to your lessons, get ready for the higher grades, but don't try to overreach and go and deal with another level's lessons. So therefore, we simply can't answer this, but it does not seem to have an end, and we can tell you it does not wrap around so that you travel and bounce around in a circle.
Boy,
End of Zeta Talk.
Yes, that was two great answers. The second question I have is, astronomers see a universe in the sky. In your world and our world, how much, to give us some idea of the universe, how much percentage-wise can you calculate we see as opposed to what may really exist in your world? And I'll take that off the air, and thank you, George. All of you have a great evening.
Thanks. Here's the Zetas on that. We've described the equivalent would be what you know is your immediate neighborhood, neighbors that you are acquainted with, and walk around, and rather than take the car, that's your known universe. Compared to what we know would be man's concept of what the universe is. We're not sure what percentage that is, but it's darn small. And so you are really unaware of almost all of the universe that we are aware of. End of Zeta Talk.
Next up, let's go to our wild card line. You're on the air with us on Coast to Coast. Hi there.
Hi, my name is Mary, and I'm from Orange, California.
Hi, Mary.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good.
I'm wanting to speak to the Zetas, actually.
All right.
Nancy, how are you doing today?
Hi, doing great, thanks.
Great, good to hear you. I'm wanting to know, you mentioned a lot about disasters, and I'm wondering, in various traditions, they talk about mitigation disasters, prevention disasters, and I'm just kind of wondering what the Zeta believe about that. If there's a way to mitigate, prevent, reduce the severity, eliminate or reduce loss of life and suffering, because that seems to be the compassionate thing to do. And I'm also wondering, what is my role and the role of others in that process?
Very good. Here's Zeta Talk on that. They'll cover both. There will be a heavy die-off. We've stated about a 90% die-off. This is because so much of mankind clusters along coastlines, and because the oceans will slosh back and forth, rolling inland like a high tide, drowning so many coastal cities. Add to that the fact that most of mankind would react to a huge disaster with a type of depression, just sit down and not do anything to save themselves, and just starve and go peacefully, or die of their injuries and not be rescued. So there's little that can be done there because mankind today does not feed their hungry or necessarily rescue disasters. Darfur, for instance, allowed to go on, year after year. So we have gone to great extents on the Zeta Talk website, as has a group of people called the Troubled Times Group, who have put together a nonprofit booklet and CD, which you can read at your leisure on your PC or whatever, to detail what people can do to help themselves. It will be like being thrown back 100 years, or like the Amish live today. Not a bad life at all, but you need to be prepared for this. If you know what to do and what steps to take, the knowledge that you carry with you as a skill set is more important than actual supplies. The poor will, in fact, do better than the rich. The rich will stay in well-stocked enclaves and be inundated by marauding gangs who will take over, or their own militias, which they think will defend them, will turn on them, where the poor will be ignored and will communities of good-hearted people who pool their skill sets and help each other survive will do the best. And there's no reason you can't survive unless you have some sort of an illness that requires kidney dialysis or you'll be healthier, you'll be thinner, less heart disease, you'll get active, you'll be in better shape, you'll interact with each other, and don't forget music and good cooks and poetry and the like. It's going to be an explorative time, and you will meet aliens who will come to assist you. If you're unafraid, they can contact you in your conscious, and may even live in their high-tech cities with them. The key here is an open heart, willingly reaching out and not being fearful. And it will depend on a locale whether or not such assistance is offered, because the element of doubt will prevail, and if anxiety would be increased, that will not happen. So there's no way to prevent the die-off that we can see, based on the fact that man is not preparing to warn people and to try to prepare them. Instead, an intractable cover-up seems to prevail, where admissions of the Earth wobble and the presence next to the sun, which showed so clearly on that coast-to-coast photo, are not being made. What is more important than these issues? Instead, you hear about Anna Nicole Smith, etc., and a Zeta Talk.
Zetas, this planet is losing its honeybees by the millions. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us what's happening?
Yeah, here's Zeta Talk. We've mentioned increasing illness as being a factor of the approaching Planet X. This is due to many reasons. The swirling core emanates of waves, rays, etc., that man is not used to. Albinos, such as the white buffalo, pop up. This is because emanations that are normally in caves, cave creatures are white, they don't need pigment, are reaching the surface. This causes some illness. Also, people are distressed. They know something is wrong. The weather is too wild. Crop shortages are showing up. And they keep getting job layoffs and the like, and yet we're told the economy is strong when obviously it's not. So they're distressed, they're distracted, irritable with each other. This causes the immune system to drop. This is affecting bees as well. Honeybees have an additional problem in that they're ported about from field to field. Therefore, when one hive gets contaminated with a infection of some sort, it's being ported about. If someone has the flu, you send them home. You don't drag them through every office building in the city to spread the flu germ. So this is what's happening. Honeybees will not die out. They'll survive. But in the short term, crop shortages are going to be badly affected. End of Zeta Talk on this.
Let's go east of the Rockies. Go ahead. You're on with us. Hello there.
Hello.
Yeah.
This is Dennis in Meridian, Mississippi.
Hi, Dennis. Go ahead.
Okay. I had a question for the Zetas. Okay. And the question is that are they conscious or aware of any like AIs on this planet or elsewhere in the universe? You know, artificial intelligence or super intelligent computer systems or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Good question. And here's the Zetas on that. We've talked about robots in the rules section of Zeta Talk because there's a misconception. Even though we use biological elements in some of our computers, for instance, how we keep telepathic contact with each other, recording information is done through a biological computer, but it is not alive. It cannot think on its own. It does not have choice. This is the rule. You use leather, for instance, in your belts and shoes. This does not mean that your shoes and belt are alive. And so that's the rule, that robots, it cannot be an enslavement of life. It has to be a machine. So movies like Artificial Intelligence, which imply that a robot can have feeling, emotion, and make choice, is incorrect. By the rules of the universe that we are allowed to required to live under, that's not allowed. End of Zeta Talk.
All right, Dennis, thanks. And let's go to our final caller. You are on the air with us. Hi there.
Hi.
Yes, sir.
My name is Mark. I'm a new caller. I'm calling from Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay, Mark.
I have a question for the Zetas. I was just wondering why they are hesitant on showing themselves and proving that they do exist, because I'm sure there's a lot of concerned people out there like me who have doubts that would like to be proven otherwise.
Here's Zeta Talk on that. Well, what about your Phoenix Lights, which happened in March of '97 and recently in 2007, so dramatic, seen by across the strait from different directions, and undeniable. Even had a councilwoman in Phoenix insisting that there should be an investigation of why what this was and not be covered up. The awakening happens at the pace of mankind. For those people who are ready to see UFOs or become contactees, albeit in their subconscious, as most choose to remain in their subconscious, this will happen. But for those people who will be frightened, we are not allowed to frighten them. By the rules we must operate under. So therefore, you take the pace of an area and say, are they ready or not? And if they're ready, they get a lot of UFO blitzes, and a lot of people give the call and become contactees. Other areas that would be frightened, nada, nothing. So this is why you have what's called UFO hotspots. Phoenix is certainly one of them. You yourself have probably given the call to become a contactee. We can confirm that. And so actually your conscious is reluctant to admit it, but your subconscious is very eager to have a chat and has had a chat with ourselves. End of Zeta Talk.
Nancy, you take care of yourself. Your website, zetatalk.com. Appreciate everything.
I love it. Welcome me back again. We'll have a busy and wonderful time. Thanks, George.
And there you have it. You know, over the years, people have purported to have been abducted by extraterrestrials. They have been ridiculed. They have been scoffed at. Some say no, they really were. You just heard Nancy Leader. Does she channel the Zetas? You make up your own mind. I'll be back in a moment with David Booth on Coast to Coast AM. Well, it was in 1979 a McDonnell Douglas DC-10 aircraft crashed, killing all 271 people aboard in Chicago. David Booth had a vision, a series of dreams, called them nightmares. He saw a plane crash. He reported it to the FAA. They checked. They believe him. It's on record. As a matter of fact, Arthur C. Clarke, in his World of Strange Powers, reports this case of David Booth and explains what happened as well. And also In Search Of featured an episode entitled Air Disaster Predictions, and it covered the case of Flight 191 and the possible prediction, they say, of David Booth. David was on the program with me March of 2004 with an individual by the name of Wayne Green. And I'll explain what happened when we come back on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast to Coast. I'm George Norrie with our special guest for the rest of tonight, David Booth. We'll take phone calls with David as well. He's got some astounding things to talk with us about tonight. It was back in March of 2004. David was in Portugal trying to meeting with Sister Lucia. She was, of course, one of those involved in the incredible Fatima episode, if you remember that. And while David was in Portugal, we were setting up the program with him and Wayne Green. And, well, once the program started, I wasn't getting the answers that I wanted from David, from Wayne, about the meeting with Sister Lucia. David, as you might remember, said that he could not reveal what was told to him. And I had felt that because they had just been on several months before that with an incredible show that David had brought to us about some predictions, I had thought, well, why are they on the air with me now if they're not going to tell me anything? So I basically booted them off. Well, this is what it sounded like back in March of 2004. Here's the deal, and this is what I want to get from you and David. Either or we go full disclosure on this program when we come back from the break, or we end it right now. You tell me what you want to do. Both you and David. If you are both hesitant to tell this coast-to-coast audience exactly what they want to hear and need to hear, I just assume go to my open-line phone calls.
Okay. I think that they need to hear what can I do about it personally.
Well, that's look,